Funding for this program was made possible by WQED's members, the Allegheny Regional Asset District, and the Pittsburgh Foundation. Thank you.
Do you guys have any other thoughts about what to do for Trans Awareness Week? Yes.
While our region continues to advance,
I do hereby solemnly swear or affirm
we are also a work in progress.
I want this to be something that grows, that other people model.
Striving to meet the needs of our diverse communities. On this program, we're going to meet people from just a few of the many organizations that seek to support the region's LGBTQ citizens.
I think we owe people the respect, like we do for anything else, to just live their lives.
We'll also talk to members of Pittsburgh's transgender community as they work to build a city of equity and inclusion.
Because as much as people don't realize it, the support of a family can change everything for a trans kid.
And to find their own authentic lives. Just outside downtown Pittsburgh is Brashear High School. In many ways, it's your typical modern public school. Historically, Brashear was the first public school in the area to institute a transgender student policy that became the template for all Pittsburgh public schools. Devin Brown teaches language arts at Brashear and is one of the advisors of the school's GSA.
Who's doing the newspaper class? Most of my week is spent teaching French or Russian. 7 years ago when we started the GSA, it was the Gay Straight Alliance. A couple years ago, as many of our trans students started to become more visible and more active, we decided to change the name to the Gender Sexuality Alliance. They were looking for someone to do a GSA advisory for the following year. And they asked me, they reached out to me, and I was one of several gay teachers, but the other two were tied up in other obligations. We met a couple times, but then they were seniors who felt really strongly about social justice, and they said they wanted to make a difference.
Megan Perfetti is Brashear's health and phys ed teacher and the district lead for all health and phys ed teachers in Pittsburgh schools.
We have in our curriculum a sexuality unit, and that encompasses everything. And one of the main points that we want to talk about is that people are different. There's truly not a little spot for everybody to fit in, and we need to be aware of that.
Do you feel like it's helped kids learn to be more empathetic, both within and without of the GSA?
Oftentimes, when they're comfortable enough sharing their own personal experience where they've been thrown out, or their mother doesn't talk to them, or attempted suicides or thinking about suicides, it gets really personal, and I think it's really hard not to build empathy under those circumstances.
Brashear's GSA helps to build LGBTQ awareness as well as providing a space for support and friendship.
So let's do this real quickly, and starting with Avery, and just think for a second. Think about what GSA means to you.
For me, it's like I'm in a safe place because people won't judge me for who I am.
This is gonna be this is gonna sound kind of lame. In a sense, GSA kind of got me through high school. I wouldn't be how I am if it wasn't for GSA helping me.
The gender and transgender expansive policy that's in place in Pittsburgh Public Schools is pretty much modeled on the policy that was formed here at Brashear. What was the inspiration behind that in the first place?
So the reason why things went so well at Brashear and what brought it on was our student Avery. We met Avery when she was in 8th grade. She came to check out Brashear. She was beginning to transition, and she wanted to know what life would be like as a trans student at Brashear. And that's when we sat down and we put together a plan, and we asked Vanessa Davis from Thrive of Southwestern Pennsylvania. We implemented it the following fall. We did staff training for how to best support trans kids. What does it mean to be a transgender person? And from that policy, which was a really progressive, very comprehensive policy, things went really well that year at Brashear.
With the help of the board and faculty, the policy was expanded to the entire district. So in plain language, how does the transgender policy help students?
So it looks at some things, that everyone reads about in the news. It addresses use of facilities, restrooms, locker rooms. It addresses pronoun usage. It addresses confidentiality at the school, within the school, with families. It's really about protecting and supporting transgender students or gender expansive students wherever they are in their journey.
Avery Steck is a senior and one of the students who helped make the policy a reality.
I came in here, I was like one of the first out trans kids at Brashear. And we didn't really have much representation, but we had to have some type of protection. And so I came in here and I was like, I'm not going to be forced to be something I'm not.
How did that make you feel know that people wanted to put their arms around you, figuratively, and support you?
It meant a lot because growing up, I was terrified to be out. If I would have told little 5th grade me even that I was going to be coming to school in 8-inch heels and having my makeup all done, 5th grade me would have laughed in your face. But here I am, and I can look back and say, okay, I've grown a lot, and this school has grown a lot, and it means a lot that I've helped make a difference. And being that there is a policy now that protects all trans kids in all Pittsburgh public schools, that means so much to me, not only thinking of myself now, but thinking there are kids that are going to be like I was in elementary school who are protected, and they're going to be able to openly identify and be themselves.
According to a 2015 Gallup poll, 3% of Pittsburghers identify as gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender out of a population of just over 303,000. Compared to other places, it's not a lot, but that hasn't stopped the city from being an outlier. Meet Corey Buckner of Mayor Bill Peduto's office.
My name is Corey Buckner. I work for the City of Pittsburgh. I'm the LGBTQIA+ Advisory Council Coordinator for the Mayor's Office.
Take me back to when that panel was formed and why.
So it actually started years ago under Mayor Ravenstall's administration. So I actually have been working with the mayor to bring that back since he had gotten into office.
As an advisory council,
it started off with us just planning to look towards making an inclusive group of individuals who represent our entire community. And so we put a lot of thought and effort into that.
Pittsburgh has already done some impressive work. It was the first city in the state to ban so-called conversion therapy. It also offers gender affirmation healthcare benefits to all employees and their dependents. And in 2017, the city was recognized by the Human Rights Campaign's Municipal Equality Index.
For the first time, Pittsburgh is one of 68 cities across the country to earn a perfect score for advancing LGBTQ inclusive policies.
The importance of SOGI awareness is also part of the city's culture.
SOGI stands for Sexual Orientation, Gender Identity, and Expression. Here at the City of Pittsburgh, we are currently training our employees on SOGI to better understand terminology, to understand the differences between gender identity and the way that we express ourselves. Are there policies that we could create to make the City of Pittsburgh better for LGBTQIA+ people? I wouldn't doubt that. We live in a changing environment. But where I really see the City of Pittsburgh playing a role is making our state, our country, a better place for LGBTQI+ people.
When it comes to local businesses, the city's done good work there as well. The HRC also has a corporate equality index that rates places to work based on their commitment to LGBTQ equality. Nationally, 609 employers earned perfect scores. 8 of them are right here in Pittsburgh. We stopped for a visit with the folks at PNC.
My name is Terry Boring, and I'm a business architect here at PNC. I'm also the vice president of our PNC Proud Employee Business Resource Group.
I asked Terry about the HRC's rating and its importance.
We understand that our commitment to diversity is not just the right thing to do, it's also vital to the success of our company and to our business. We've had support for domestic partnerships in our benefits package since 2004, and more recently we've begun to offer transition-related healthcare expenses for transgendered people as part of our healthcare coverage.
There's so much unemployment and underemployment in the LGBTQ community, particularly amongst transgender people. Is there any kind of training program for jobs here at PNC?
Yes and yes. So the two things that come to mind just off the bat are, first, we partner with different organizations, for example, universities, to make sure that we have a presence at job fairs and at hiring events. We also intentionally go out and find folks that are in the LGBT and specifically the transgendered community, and help them with things like resume building, with interview skills. And one of the things that we've really gone out of our way to do, particularly in the past couple of years and just the region here, is to mobilize the allied community. And I myself am not LGBT, and neither are some of the folks that are also on our leadership committee, but we are very active and involved in the cause. And part of our commitment is to creating awareness that you don't have to be gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgendered in order to care about this or act on it.
Like there's this. For Alexander McCarthy, raising awareness runs in the family.
No.
We talked with Alexander, his mom, and his sister Jillian about growing up in the city and the importance of support.
I mean, growing up in Pittsburgh, like I've had really good experiences. Everyone in all the communities that I've come out to have been really supportive.
You were part of the Rainbow Alliance when you were at the University of Pittsburgh. Why was it important for you to work for change?
I was the president of the Rainbow Alliance from, I guess, 2014 to 2015. And it's really Pitt's only LGBTQIA organization. I mean, I don't know if you saw my diploma on there, but that's probably the first one that was printed with a student's preferred name without making it legal or anything. We also got preferred names in the system, like the course web system. You can use whichever bathroom you feel comfortable using.
The McCarthys are definitely a team, led by Mom Tracy.
I address intolerance pretty directly. If someone says something that is out of line or that I feel is either intolerant or uneducated, I feel like I'm in a position to educate people all the time. I feel like that's part of my role as a parent.
For Jillian, it's about more than labels.
I would say that transness is not a centrally defining feature of our family. We have, I would say, just about exactly the dynamic that we have always had. We just maybe have more feisty conversations about the intersections of gender and sexual orientation and various other things. But yeah, it's not like every day is a trauma or anything.
I asked Alexander if he felt like he needed to be a role model for other transgender young people.
Yeah, I definitely feel like I need to be a role model for other trans kids. Like doing this thing. It's a lot to go and say all about your experience and stuff on camera, but I'm just hoping if some other kids see that, they'll be like, oh, I can do that too.
At the Sanctuary Gallery on Penn Avenue,
Facebook told me you synced it.
Michael David Battle prepares for an evening of art and fellowship. Michael knows all about multitasking. He's the director of the Garden of Peace Project, a force behind Trans Voices, a continuing arts project, a workshop for LGBTQ artists, and the QTPOC House, a temporary housing space for LGBTQ people of color, to name just a few. Tell me about the Garden of Peace Project.
When we started, we were a demonstration project, and I was really just interested in creating spaces for Black, queer, and trans folks in the city. Within about 6 months, there started to be this really overwhelming need that was expressed from the community of needing housing or jobs or education opportunities. Early on, I recognized the statistics and the numbers for Black people always being disproportionately higher in healthcare and infant mortality and education. So I just really wanted to do something. So now the other thing that I kind of brought in with other people, particularly with my partner, Joy Kimmett. We're both artists, so we brought the art element into Garden of Peace Project, and part of that is Sanctuary.
The QTPOC House Project and Trans Voices both received funding in 2017 an invaluable help for the work being done.
The funding for the housing project actually came from Borealis Philanthropy. The Heinz Endowments gave us funding for the transformative arts process, and they also gave us a general grant. So we were able to facilitate a free day camp at the Children's Museum this summer. It was 2 weeks long.
Having experienced homelessness, he understands better than most the need for stable housing.
Since we started that housing project, there were 3 people who were living there. They were able to really find some sustainability and some structure. And because we were subsidizing part of the rent, it meant that they could save money. It meant that one of them was able to go and be trained as an EMS. The funding that has come through has almost been an affirmation that we're doing good work. And I think that, especially as a Black, queer, and trans-led organization, you rarely see or hear you're doing a great job.
As we work to build a more inclusive region, it helps to understand and use respectful terminology. According to GLAAD, the leading LGBTQ media monitoring organization, here are a few definitions. LGBTQ is an acronym for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer. Sometimes, when the Q is seen at the end of LGBT, it can also mean questioning. Transgender, an umbrella term used to describe people whose gender identity and/or expression differs from what is typically associated with the sex they were assigned at birth. Gender identity, a person's internal, deeply held sense of their gender. Most people have a gender identity of being a man or a woman, or boy or girl. For transgender people, their own internal gender identity does not match the sex they were assigned at birth. Some people may be gender fluid, a term used to describe a person who may not have a set gender identity, identifying as male, female, both, or neither. Helping young people affirm all aspects of their gender identity is the work of the caring staff at UPMC's Children's Hospital.
That separates out a person's gender identity, which is, my name is Joanne Goodall. I'm a nurse practitioner, family practice nurse practitioner in the Center for Adolescent and Young Adult Health.
Tell me the kinds of therapies you offer young people looking for help with their transition.
Depending on what a client wants, anywhere from just basic education for themselves, for their family members if that's needed. We give advice to parents of young children who ask for that. And it's anywhere from just education to evaluation of lab work, of medical services, to providing hormones for someone who would like that to happen.
Tell me about the drug called hormone blockers.
So some of it depends on what age someone gets to you at. So if you get somebody who's young and pre-pubertal, you can't do anything medically. You can't do anything medically until someone starts puberty. At that age, they can start puberty blockers, is how they're known as. So if you identify as a trans boy, you don't want breast development. If you're a trans girl, you don't want facial hair. So it's those things that you can prevent from happening, and that saves someone years later from having to have surgical procedures.
And counseling's always a big part of this, isn't it?
Therapy is really important, and we would always like people to be in therapy. Sometimes people come to us with years of therapy for a variety of reasons. Not everybody actually needs counseling. Being transgender isn't a mental health problem.
To learn more about the center's work, I spoke to pediatric endocrinologist Dr. Selma Witchell. Dr. Witchell, can you tell us what gender dysphoria is?
Gender dysphoria is a sense of the person's identity or gender identity doesn't match with their biology in terms of the genital structures that they were born with.
Is there a typical age? Can it happen at any time?
It happens many different times. We typically think of it happening in early adolescence as puberty is happening, or at least that's when children will share with their parents how they're feeling.
While visiting Children's, we had a chance to speak to Alyssa Ridenauer, a young woman looking forward to the future.
Okay, so what's new?
Well, I'm going to college in the fall, so.
Alyssa was one of 3 transgender students behind the successful lawsuit against Pine Richland High School that allows trans students to use the bathrooms of their choice. So it was 4 years ago when you first started coming in for treatment?
Yes.
And did your parents bring you, and what did they think?
Yeah, my parents brought me, and they thought it was a really great environment. Yeah, they really like it here, and they really were able to connect with the doctors and everyone.
Adolescence is such a scary time anyway, and to be going through figuring out who you are and then adding your true gender expression to all of that. How did you get the courage to do that?
I think I was just living this enough. Like it's been like it was like a year or so whenever I decided to fully transition in 8th grade. And around that time, I was just ready to break out of my shell and be who I was. So I think it was just the wanting to be myself so bad that I had the courage to do it and just not care about what anybody thought.
What would you tell a young person who's watching this, who's struggling with their gender identity?
We're getting there. We're making progress one step at a time.
Thanks to the team at Children's, there's hope and help for young people and their families.
Congratulations on graduation.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's definitely a win, both legally and academically. So,
why is this work so important?
I just saw a young adult today who spent most of his time staying at home in his room because he was so distressed about his body. And I think helping people realize their dreams rather than sitting and being depressed, I think that's really important.
Our city is fortunate to have a growing list of dedicated organizations and activists who support the LGBTQ community. Lawrenceville is home to PERSAD, and Betty Hill is the executive director.
PERSAD Center is actually the nation's second oldest licensed counseling center, specifically created for the LGBTQ communities. At that time, in 1972, issues of homosexuality were considered a pathology. So if people went to get counseling services, the response was to try to change them or fix them. And our founders knew that that was not a correct response.
I asked Betty how the center helps the transgender community.
Often people are very clear about who they are, but they're having a lot of trouble maneuvering in the world that keeps trying to put them in very much a binary box. So we're often giving information and we're giving referrals to people of safe spaces and places and advocates that they can go to get their needs met, both medically, socially, spiritually.
Along with information and counseling, PERSAD also assists with legal services, HIV/AIDS testing, and primary medical care. Are you proud of what we're doing here in the city?
Personally, I love Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh is a very unique city, and it's a challenging city. We still have some very serious problems, and particularly the outcomes for transgender people are very worrisome to me. And I think the intersectionality of race and transgender, our trans people of color are doing worse and having even more negative outcomes, and they get less visibility and less resources, and we need to pay attention to that and make sure that we're making safe space and a way for people to be themselves. People have to feel safe in order to be able to be themselves, and then when they have that comfort of being themselves, then they can begin to advocate and find voice and do and engage in activities that bring change. So I think that's an important place that PERSAD plays for the LGBT and particularly the T community right now.
While there are triumphs in the transgender community, there's much that has to change. While up to 1.6 million young people are reportedly homeless, nearly 40% of that number identify as LGBTQ.
Derica Banner.
Misha Caldwell.
Jamie Lee Wounded Arrow.
JoJo Stryker.
Kiki Collier.
China Gibson.
According to the Human Rights Campaign, 28 transgender people were reported as violently killed in 2017, the majority of them people of color. Overall, transgender people of color experience higher rates of poverty, physical abuse, discrimination, and health disparities than their white counterparts.
So in order to protect those lives.
For Ciora Thomas, transgender poverty and homelessness are more than statistics. In June of last year, during Pride, there were 2 marches in downtown Pittsburgh. The EQT Equality March,
Black, brown, short, tall, right should be for us all.
And the People's Pride March. organized as an act of solidarity and resistance.
Today was about taking our pride back.
At the heart of the march was Ciora Thomas, who believes in empowering trans people of color within their communities.
My name is Ciora Thomas, and I'm a freedom fighter. I am the founder and president of Sisters PGH. We focus on the homelessness of our transgender and non-binary communities, targeting communities of color in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and abroad, Western Pennsylvania.
How did your growing up years impact the activist that you are today?
It made me a lot stronger. It made me a lot more resilient of the things around me, because these are things that I was used to, like white supremacy and oppression and hatred. So I founded Sisters PGH in 2013, and it started out as an advocacy program in 2013. I really didn't even believe in myself then. I didn't believe that this could be possible. I didn't believe that, you know, this issue could be resolved, but what I did know is that we needed a voice. Throughout the years, it has grown and grown and grown and grown. And our mission now and moving forward is to not only shelter the trans and non-binary communities, but also permanent housing.
Ciora is part of the city's LGBTQIA+ advisory panel. And in 2017, she was recognized by the Incline for working to make the city a better place to live. What would a truly livable Pittsburgh look like for you, and what are your hopes for the future?
A truly livable Pittsburgh would, for me, would be seeing more trans people of color within the workplace, seeing more trans people of color in college, seeing more trans people of color finishing high school, middle school, elementary school. Whenever I leave this earth, I want to make sure that my community is safe, we are housed, and we have opportunities to grow, you know, within society, with no holdbacks, with no holdbacks.
We need to elaborate more.
This program is by no means the definitive story of our transgender community.
We're not aware of what's going on. We can't be part of the changes that happen.
We are grateful to all the people who so generously shared their journeys, their time, and their talents.
That the city is stepping up.
Adolescents.
We weren't able to include them all in the program,
One step at a time.
but their contributions were vitally important to this project. We thank all the participants as they continue to build a better understanding of the world we all share. To learn more about how to be an ally for transgender people, visit GLAAD's webpage at www.glaad.org/transgender/allies.